The history of the United States is deeply intertwined with war. From the country's birth during the American Revolution to its involvement in global conflicts throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, war has played a significant role in shaping the nation's politics, economy, and society. Below is a detailed exploration of the major wars the United States has participated in, spanning over 2 centuries. Number 1. American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783. The American Revolutionary War, also known as the American War of Independence, was the conflict in which the 13 American colonies sought to gain independence from Great Britain. The war began as a result of growing tensions between the colonies and the British government, particularly concerning taxation and representation. The colonists, led by figures like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, formed the Continental Army and declared their independence in 1776. The war lasted for 8 years and ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1783. The British recognized the independence of the United States, and the new nation was born. This war not only established the U.S., but also inspired future democratic movements around the world. Number 2. War of 1812, 1812 to 1815. The War of 1812 was fought between the United States and the British Empire, largely over issues related to trade restrictions, the impressment of American sailors into the British Navy, and British support of Native American tribes resisting American expansion. The conflict also represented a test of American sovereignty and the nation's ability to defend itself. One of the most notable events of the war was the British invasion of Washington, D.C. in 1814, during which they set fire to several buildings, including the White House. Despite these setbacks, the United States successfully repelled British forces at key battles like the Battle of New Orleans. The Treaty of Ghent ended the war in 1815, restoring relations between the two nations to pre-war conditions without resolving many of the underlying issues. Number 3. Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. The Mexican-American War was a conflict between the United States and Mexico, primarily over the annexation of Texas and the desire for further territorial expansion. After Texas declared independence from Mexico in 1836 and was later annexed by the U.S. in 1845, tensions between the two countries escalated. The war was marked by several key battles, including the Siege of Veracruz and the capture of Mexico City. It ended with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, in which Mexico ceded a vast portion of its territory to the United States, including what is now California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and parts of Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming. This war further fueled the concept of manifest destiny, the belief that the U.S. was destined to expand across the North American continent. Number 4. American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. The American Civil War remains the deadliest conflict in U.S. history, with an estimated 620,000 to 750,000 deaths. It was fought between the northern states, the Union, and the southern states that seceded to form the Confederate States of America. The primary causes of the war were the issues of slavery, states' rights, and economic disparities between the North and South. The war included several significant battles, such as the Battle of Gettysburg, the Battle of Antietam, and the Siege of Vicksburg. The Union, under the leadership of President Abraham Lincoln and General Ulysses S. Grant, eventually emerged victorious, and the Confederacy was defeated in 1865. The war led to the abolition of slavery through the 13th Amendment and set the stage for Reconstruction, a period of rebuilding the Southern economy and integrating formerly enslaved people into American society. Number 5. Spanish-American War, 1898. The Spanish-American War was a brief but significant conflict between the United States and Spain. The war was driven by the U.S.'s desire to expand its influence and by public outrage over Spain's brutal treatment of Cuban revolutionaries. The mysterious sinking of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor also played a role in igniting hostilities. The war lasted only a few months, but it had far-reaching consequences. The U.S. decisively defeated Spain, leading to the Treaty of Paris in 1898, which resulted in the U.S. acquiring several of Spain's colonies, including Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. The war marked the United States' emergence as a global power with overseas territories. Number 6. World War I, 1917 to 1918. Although World War I began in 1914, the United States did not join the conflict until 1917. The U.S. entered the war after German U-boat attacks on American shipping and the interception of the Zimmermann telegram, in which Germany encouraged Mexico to declare war on the United States. American forces under the command of General John J. Pershing played a crucial role in turning the tide of the war in favor of the Allies. U.S. troops participated in several major offensives, including the Meuse-Argonne offensive, which helped bring about the war's end. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 officially ended the war, though its harsh terms set the stage for future conflicts. Number 7. World War II, 1941 to 1945. World War II was the largest and deadliest conflict in human history, and the United States played a central role in the Allied victory. The U.S. entered the war after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Shortly thereafter, the U.S. declared war on Japan, and Germany declared war on the U.S. American forces fought in both the European and Pacific theaters. In Europe, the U.S. was involved in key battles such as D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge, and the liberation of Nazi concentration camps. In the Pacific, American forces engaged in island-hopping campaigns and fought in major battles like the Battle of Midway, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. The war ended in 1945 with the unconditional surrender of Germany in May and Japan in September, after the U.S. dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The war solidified the United States' status as a global superpower and led to the establishment of the United Nations, intended to prevent future conflicts. Number 8. Korean War, 1950-1953. The Korean War was a Cold War-era conflict between North Korea, supported by China and the Soviet Union, and South Korea, backed by the United States and other United Nations forces. The war began when North Korea invaded South Korea in 1950, seeking to unify the peninsula under communist rule. The U.S., under the command of General Douglas MacArthur, played a leading role in defending South Korea. The war was marked by intense fighting, including battles like the Incheon Landing and the Battle of Pusan Perimeter. The war ended in 1953 with an armistice agreement, but no formal peace treaty was signed, meaning the Korean peninsula remains technically at war. The conflict resulted in the division of Korea into two separate nations, a situation that persists to this day. Number 9. Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975. The Vietnam War was a protracted and controversial conflict between the Communist government of North Vietnam, supported by the Soviet Union and China, and the government of South Vietnam, supported by the United States. The U.S. became involved in the conflict in an effort to prevent the spread of communism in Southeast Asia, in line with the domino theory. The war escalated throughout the 1960s, with U.S. forces conducting large-scale operations such as the Tet Offensive, the Battle of Hue, and Operation Rolling Thunder. However, the war became increasingly unpopular in the United States due to its high cost, the loss of American lives, and the media's coverage of atrocities, such as the My Lai massacre. The U.S. eventually withdrew its forces in 1973, and South Vietnam fell to Communist forces in 1975. The war resulted in over 58,000 American deaths and left a lasting impact on American society, particularly in terms of public trust in government and attitudes toward military intervention. Number 10. Gulf War, 1990-1991. The Gulf War, also known as Operation Desert Storm, was a conflict between Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, and a coalition of 35 nations led by the United States. The war began when Iraq invaded Kuwait in August 1990, prompting a swift international response. After months of diplomatic efforts failed to convince Iraq to withdraw, the U.S. and its allies launched a massive military campaign in January 1991. The war was characterized by the use of advanced technology, including precision-guided munitions, and resulted in the swift liberation of Kuwait. The Gulf War was a decisive victory for the coalition forces, and it demonstrated the U.S.'s military prowess in the post-Cold War world. Number 11. War in Afghanistan, 2001 to 2021. The war in Afghanistan began in response to the September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks carried out by al-Qaeda. The U.S. launched Operation Enduring Freedom in October 2001 to dismantle al-Qaeda and remove the Taliban regime, which had provided sanctuary to the terrorist group. The war became the longest in U.S. history, as American forces engaged in counter-terrorism and nation-building efforts in Afghanistan. Despite early successes in overthrowing the Taliban, the war dragged on for 2 decades, with the Taliban eventually regaining power after U.S. forces withdrew in 2021. The conflict raised questions about the effectiveness of military intervention and the limits of U.S. influence in reshaping foreign nations. Number 12. Iraq War, 2003 to 2011. The Iraq War, also known as the Second Gulf War, began in 2003 when the U.S. led a coalition to invade Iraq, citing concerns that Saddam Hussein's regime possessed weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, and posed a threat to global security. The invasion quickly toppled Saddam's government, but no WMDs were found, leading to widespread controversy over the war's justification. The war transitioned into a lengthy occupation and insurgency, with American forces facing opposition from various Iraqi factions and foreign fighters. The conflict resulted in significant loss of life and destabilized the region, contributing to the rise of extremist groups such as ISIS. U.S. combat operations officially ended in 2011, though the U.S. has continued to play a role in Iraq's security. The United States has been involved in numerous wars, both at home and abroad, throughout its history. These conflicts have shaped the nation's development, tested its ideals, and left lasting legacies. From the fight for independence in the Revolutionary War to the global engagements of the 20th and 21st centuries, war has been a constant feature of America's story. Thanks for watching Techie Millennial. Be sure to like and sub if you enjoyed the content, and heck, why not ring the bell, eh?